Chapter 2. Light and Shadows. Nightlight. Nightlight traversed the plains as the sun set. She was on the hunt for the rarest of the animals, a pink sheep. Why? She wanted pink wool. Why? To combine with her blue wool. Why? To make a transgender flag. She didn't care that she was new to the hermit crew. She wanted everyone in the world to know that she was trans and she was proud. It's not like there would be anyone uncomfortable with the flag. They were all a very supportive group. She still wanted to remind the world of where she came from and the struggles she had to face every day. In order to do this, though, she would need the wool of a rare pink sheep. And some friends. Where was everybody? It was dark out now. Monsters would be emerging from the shadows to attack, and Light only had an iron sword and half a broken shield to defend herself with. It was also getting foggy. She couldn't see more than 3 feet in front of her. She had a shovel on her. Maybe she could just dig down and hide until morning. She felt someone standing behind her. They were stepping in time with her without making a noise. Could it be a zombie or a skeleton? Could be a creeper. If it got too close, it would explode. Light fiercely turned around as she drew her sword and slashed the figure behind her across the chest. Ah! The figure screamed as it fell over backwards. Creepers don't scream. Could it be? Light leaned over the figure to see the face of Beth. Light panicked. She had just killed her only friend in the world for trying to sneak up on her. What would she do? Burn the body? No, that's too much work and she would smell weird. She could bury her, but that would... Beth took out a piece of bread and began to eat. She's alive! Ow, remarked Beth sarcastically. I'm so sorry, I thought you were a creeper. Light tried to get out her words, but they all came out as a nervous mess. Beth looked at her stomach wound as it healed. No big deal, Beth responded. I just wanted to scare you. Light helped Beth to her feet. She noticed how her eyes sparkled in the moonlight and how her smile could help Light find her way through any fog. Light quickly put those thoughts out of her head. So what if they could always make each other laugh and Light never wanted the goodbye hugs to end? Beth was her friend. Her only friend. Beth was new here just like her and she couldn't afford to mess up her friendship. Do you know where you're going to base? Beth asked. Not yet. I'm on the hunt for a pink sheep, Light responded. For your signature trans flag? Of course. What else is pink wool good for? I saw one just over the hill. I put it in a hole for you. You did that for me? What else are best friends for? Light tried to hide her blushing by stepping back into the darkness. Can you show me where it is? Light asked. Sure, Beth responded excitedly. Beth began to lead Light through the fog. Light was terrified. Why was it so foggy? Why weren't the monsters attacking? Did Beth secretly hate her? Where did that last one come from? She had no time for that now. Beth was here, and she couldn't let on how scared she was. She wanted to reach for her hand, but that might be too much. She would just have to settle for watching her eyes sparkle in the moonlight. Boss Beth. Beth was terrified of Light. She wasn't physically threatening in any way, of course. She was much smaller than any of the other hermits. Long blonde hair that wouldn't lend itself well to a battle. Also kind of a klutz. No, what scared Beth the most was how much she loved Light. Not simply love in the friendship way, but love as in the it's a miracle she can stand up and talk to her at the same time type of way. They had been friends for 8 years before they met the hermits. They've been on many adventures together. Wait, how did they meet the hermits? Who were they before them? So many adventures, but none she could remember. Why? Is anyone listening? Is Light holding her hand? Beth looked down to see the terrified Light wrapped around her arm. Beth couldn't believe it. Did Light like her too? Beth looked ahead to see how it had Light so spooked, and was met by a horrendous sight. In front of them was the hole with the pink sheep in it, as Beth had remembered making it, but above the hole was a monster. A figure shrouded in sprawling chaotic darkness with 4 black tentacles sticking out of its back. The bottom 2 were propping him up 8 feet in the air. She knew the figure was a threat because, obviously, she needed to protect Nightlight. The figure opened its pair of glowing round white eyes before it spoke in a terrible, deep, booming voice.
Feed me.
Beth froze. It was her first mistake. Light was supposed to be the only one who scared her, but there she was, completely petrified. The creature cast one of its tentacles at Beth and sent her flying back into the fog. Beth screamed in pain as she flew into a tree. She tried to get up and back in the fight, but was forced to dive out of the way as a tentacle swung at her. The tentacle smashed the tree to pieces. Whatever this creature was, it was strong.
Feed me.
The creature grumbled out again. The creature began to wrap its tentacles around Beth's waist. She squirmed in fear. She was stuck. Her arms were pinned to her waist. She had a stone sword with her, but she couldn't reach it. There was nothing she could do.
Feed me.
The creature pulled Beth close and looked directly into her eyes. They say the eyes are the window to the soul. This creature had none. The only thing beyond this monster's eyes was hunger, and Beth was its next meal. Beth wanted to look away from the monster's eyes, but she couldn't. The wind began to swirl around them. Beth didn't know if this was the creature's doing or if this was just the way of the world. But this sudden windstorm was about to be the only witness to her demise. The creature brought Beth closer to its face before dropping her and reeling back in pain as it let out a monstrous roar. Beth quickly got up to see Light holding up a torch and trying to stab the monster. Eat flame, beast! Light shouted. Beth had never seen her this angry before. The creature quickly recovered and glared directly into their souls. It began to sprout more tentacles as its eyes burned an even hotter white. Beth drew her sword. She knew it wouldn't be enough to stop that monster, but she was calm once again. Light had that effect on her. As long as she was around, there wasn't anything they couldn't do together. You go left, I go right, Beth said. Light nodded her head in agreement. It was a phrase that was ultimately meaningless, but Beth thought it might comfort Light and make her think she had some sort of plan. Just as she resigned herself to attack, she heard a familiar moan of a zombie. Out of the darkness and out of the windstorm, zombie skeletons and creepers began to emerge, all with, what else, glowing white eyes. The zombies were a familiar foe to the hermits, undead creatures with green rotting flesh and torn clothes hunched over and only able to see through their normally solid black eyes. And who could forget the humble creeper? A four-legged camouflage green monster with a long neck protruding up from its stubby legs and a face with blacked-out eyes and a mouth with rows of sharp teeth. They had this nasty habit of exploding when you got too close. This creature appeared to have the ability to control the monsters in the area. They were outnumbered. Beth had no plan for this. In all her adventuring years, she had never seen the monsters work as a team. They were mainly just mindless kill-on-sight creatures that were nothing more than 2 swings of her sword away from being a body on the ground. But this was different. "Beth, I'm scared," Light said. She had never failed to tell Beth what she was thinking, and it was looking like their last stand was no exception. Beth decided to be honest with her. "Me too," she answered. The two nervously held up their weapons. They were going to die in the middle of nowhere, but at least they would die together. An arrow flew past Beth and Light and landed directly in the eye of the beast, causing it to roar out in pain. The pair turned around to see some welcome familiar faces. Out of the fog and the windstorm emerged B-Dubs, Zombie Cleo, and Impulse SV. The 3 of them were all dressed to the nines in a mix of iron and diamond armor, all glinting with enchantment. "Get away from the newbies!" shouted Impulse, his beard stubble showing prominently. The creature looked enraged as it used one of its tentacles to rip the arrow out of its eye. Of course, it only had one response.
Feed me!
With those haunting words, the monster's small army turned to the others and began their attack. Impulse quickly pulled out an enchanted crossbow and fired it at a group of approaching zombies. The crossbow unleashed 3 arrows into the heads of 3 zombies, splitting their skulls and spilling their black blood onto the grass. A skeleton took aim at Impulse while he was distracted with the zombies, but Zombie Cleo let out her famous Scottish battle cry as she leapt through the air and cut down the skeleton. While she was pinning the skeleton to the ground, a zombie managed to uppercut her and knock her over. Cleo managed to leap back onto her feet as she kicked the zombie down. B-Dubs cut down a zombie as he let out a triumphant, "Ha-ha!" A creeper ran behind B-Dubs and he screamed in terror. "Yeah!" He quickly used his shield to knock it to the ground before slamming the edge of his shield into the monster's neck and decapitating it before it could explode. The monster watched this army fall. It knew it couldn't last under this much pressure, so it went for the weakest link. Beth turned just in time to see the monster lunge at Light. Thinking fast, she leapt through the air and drop-kicked the monster on its back. The monster wailed in pain as it floundered, its tentacles flailing up in the air like an upended turtle. Maybe it was the fear, maybe it was the anger for attacking the secret love of her life, but Beth just had to ask. "Who are you?" The creature coldly looked at her. Where hunger once filled the creature's eyes, it was now replaced with hatred. She could see the fire in its eyes. It wanted to see her and everyone she loved, Light, burn. The creature struggled to get its words out, as if learning to talk for the first time.
I am Abyss.
The creature pushed itself back onto its tentacles and used them to run away. Impulse looked up from his work along with the others. The micro-monster army had all been felled by their quick handiwork. "Oi, that was intense," Cleo remarked. "Does anyone have any clue what that thing was?" shouted B-Dubs from the top of his lungs. "It called itself the Abyss," Beth informed them. "This is why we should always sleep!" B-Dubs had a thing about always sleeping each night to avoid the monsters, who would not attack if you were unconscious. Impulse spoke up. "Are you guys okay?" he asked the still-rattled Beth and Light. Light was too terrified to speak. The first time she had got to meet her hero Impulse and he had to save her from a monster attack. How embarrassing. That and her other recent encounter with the Abyss had her too shaken to utter a word. Beth spoke for her. "We should hold up in a mountain until morning." "Dawn should break in a few minutes," Impulse remarked. "You can hold up with us in a cave we found until then." With that, the group of 5 set off on a search for the others' cave base. It had been a rough start for Light and Beth, but they were still determined to make a good first impression on their heroes. Beth had also come to her own resolution because of that monster. None of them knew how long they had in this world together. Could be an eternity, could be a day with that thing on the loose. So Beth made a mission for herself. Before a year had passed in this world, she was going to tell Light how she felt about her. Thank you all for listening to another chapter of the Hermitcraft story, Book 1, Mr. Mayor. I hope you all enjoyed, and have a good rest of your day, everybody. See you in 2 weeks. That's our show, folks. Good night.